minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, for the courtesy. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you. The hearings that this committee has undertaken have been substantive, empirical information being at the center of the discussion, and I sets a very good, I think, tone for how we should be dealing with a lot of the questions that face the committee as a whole. And that is the fact that if science needs to guide us, fact needs to guide us, because we're dealing with elements in our jurisdiction that demand that. And the fact that we've ignored it doesn't make it right. And so I want to thank you for that and for the tone. And thank you, Mr. Oliver, for your testimony and for being here. Let me just go into some questions on some issues that perhaps I think also need to be covered relative to your testimony. Mr. Oliver, some reports indicate that up to 85% of North American right whales have scars associated with interactions with fishing gear. And my question is, what's NOAA doing or planning to do to ensure that such fishing lines are not deployed in times and places where that right whales are present at the time? Does NOAA have a strong understanding of where fishing that impacts right whales is occurring, and what is the process to address that particular question? If I may, Mr. Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Congressman. A number of areas in response to that question. The most important thing that we can do to minimize these entanglement occurrences is to better understand where and when right whales are occurring, and obviously, and we know that through recent scientific studies and information, they are changing some of those patterns. For example, part of the reason we had the large mortality event in 2017 is they apparently moved into the Gulf of St. Lawrence in Canadian waters, where there was a concentration of fishing gear, which was a relatively new migration pattern or feeding.
If I may, at that point, Mr. Oliver, so right whales are migrating to new locations, and in part due to climate change. So, to that point that you made, what is NOAA doing to address climate change shifts? And as migrating patterns shift because of the change, what appropriate management tools, new technologies, what's being used to deal with that ongoing reality? That's, now that we know that.
Yeah, well, we're trying to better understand exactly where these shifts in zooplankton and phytoplankton are occurring so that we can predict where right whales are more likely to occur, so that we can in turn consider gear restrictions or fisheries closures in those areas. And again, it's a matter of us understanding where those whales are going to be and taking the necessary measures to reduce the juxtaposition of those whales and fishing gear. And we have a lot of research ongoing in that regard. Specifically,
Mr. Oliver, the regulations to reduce the fatal ship strikes on right whales have, successfully in that area lowered the mortality. I'm aware that NOAA is currently in the process of analyzing that particular rule, including its effectiveness and its cost. First of all, is that a true statement?
Yes.
And where is the status of that review at this point?
We expect a preliminary report by this summer, which would then be subject to both peer review and public comment and issuance of a final report later this year.
And to absolutely put you on the spot, can you assure us that NOAA will not recommend undermining the protections currently in place under that rule for right whales through this review?
I can't assure what the outcome of the review is going to be, but I'm certainly hopeful that, given the current status of this species, that any relaxation in certain areas would be for a very, very good reason, based on knowledge of either effects.
Do you believe
science.
During this rule review, do you believe given the urgency of the topic right now and the right whales, do you believe that there are opportunities are going to exist to strengthen that ship strike rule?
I think the opportunity is there, yes, sir.
Okay. Yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes